Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Bitkom eIDAS Summit in 2021. Let's talk about digital identities, about secure digitalization, and about e-government. My name is Kimberly, and it's a pleasure to be your host today on our very first international stage for this summit. We have best practices and insights from a variety of European countries. We have insights from Lithuania, from Italy, from Sweden, and from the Czech Republic. And as with every conference, I would highly encourage you to use this as a networking opportunity. If you have any questions to our speakers, feel free to use the chat on your right-hand side of your screen, ask questions, but also use this as an opportunity to network amongst the audience. We also do have a designated partner area, so if you're interested in what our partners do, feel free to check out the partner area, which you'll find in the menu on your screen, and feel free to check out their offerings and their participation in this summit. And last but not least, you can see it in the background. If you want to use social media, if you want to use online discussions, feel free to tweet about us, to write about us, and use our hashtag eIDAS21. And having said that, it's a pleasure for me to welcome our very first speaker on our international stage today. It's Nick Pope. He's the Director of Security and Standards Associates. They're providing consultancy in IT security and the application of standards in the financial, commercial, and governmental sectors. He's the Vice Chairman of ETSI Technical Committee on Electronic Signatures and Trust Signatures, and he supports Open Banking Europe on the application of eIDAS to banking across Europe. In his presentation, he will provide an update on the latest developments in ETSI on electronic signatures and trust infrastructures regarding standardization for digital signatures and trust services in support of eIDAS and global trust services. Mr. Pope, I can already see you. It's a pleasure to have you here, and the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for your warm welcome, and I'm glad to join the conference. As was said, I chair the ETSI committee. I'm vice chair of the ETSI committee concerned with digital signatures and trust service standards. And I'd like to give you this morning a quick update on what has been the latest activities in our area of digital signature and trust service standards supporting eIDAS, but also working internationally with partners to provide globally applicable standards. So just to give an introduction, we've broken our activities down to 7 areas which are shown in this green. I will just walk through each of these areas just to give you an outline of what's covered in standardization in that area, and to give you an update on the latest standards. So underpinning all these activities, we have a general framework which provides common definitions and style and guides on the use of the standards in the particular area. So moving into the first activity, the first area where a lot of our work has been done is on signature creation and validation. We have a set of standards which are commonly known as CADIS, ZADIS, PADIS, JADIS, and ASIC, which provide digital signature formats for a range of structures, including XML, CMS binary, PDF, and JSON and zip containers. And this activity over the last 6 months or so, we've first of all published the new JADIS document, which specifies in exactly the same way as our previous CADIS, ZADIS, PADIS standards how to apply digital signatures to JSON structures, and this builds on the JSON or JWS RFC signature structure. In addition to adding JSON to our suite of format standards supported. We've also provided some updates to our CADES and ZADES standard for binary and XML signatures, which clarify a number of areas, in particular use of timestamping for archiving. The second aspect of the signature creation and validation is the procedural side, and we've had a number of we've had a standard 319102-1 which defines procedures for creation and validation of the eIDAS formats, which is applicable across all the different eIDAS formats. And also we have a standard for signature validation. These have been updated again to clarify some of the details from experience, and that was in fact agreed today, so we'll be publishing it in the next few weeks and should be available for free download from the ETSI website in early July. Looking at the second area, which is actually covered by our partner organisation, SEN, we've had for some time a set of standards for smart cards and HSMs. These haven't been updated recently, but we've added in 2018 the standard for remote signing. This is still waiting for recognition in a formal implementing act, but is already widely applied across a number of countries and internationally for remote signing service and supported by our partner organisation for cloud signing signatures. Moving on to the cryptographic algorithms side, we have had for a number of years a set of recommendations for signature suites covering hash algorithms, and the asymmetric crypto, including signature suites, giving the size of hash and the public keys, as well as key generation and lifetime. And we've updated it recently to align with the latest SOGIS, the senior officials of information security across Europe. And that again was agreed today and is to be published early in the new year. We're also working on, as a supplement to the guidance, a means of encoding specific catalogues of algorithms approved in certain countries or for certain communities, referring to the algorithms in a machine readable form, which can be incorporated in as a plug-in to existing algorithm support software. And that is due for publication in the third quarter of this year. Moving on to the next area, which is looking at trust services issuing certificates for digital signatures and timestamping. We've done some updates to this work, including support of a new form of QUAC, which doesn't depend so hard on CAB Forum, and some work on identity proofing, which I'd like to give you a bit more detail. So if you're familiar with the ETSI standards, there are 3 sets of standards supporting the policy, supported by the certificate profile. And we've updated the standards for general requirements for trust services, which are applicable across trust services, the standard for issuing certificates, whether it's qualified or not. And then we have a special part which is aimed at European qualified certificates, All these series of standards have been updated to include a number of significant changes around revocation, handling short-term certificates, and I recommend to upgrade your system to take account of the latest standards. In support of website certificates, currently we build on the CAB Forum EV extended validation as defined through 411 Part 1 for general standards for issuing website certificates at the qualified level. We're working on and are close to agreement on an extension to this to allow options for not just building on the EV, that if you're familiar with the CAB Forum, the EV is the extended validation, which includes all the validation procedures, as well as the basic requirements for certificates on websites. We've now included an option to build on the more general standards for identity verification in the NCP level of 411 Part 1, and which still builds on the baseline. And this will allow greater flexibility and also building on the work we've been carrying out for over the last year on improving the identity proofing, covering not just physical presence, but various techniques for remote identity proofing, either with a person attending and doing online checks or unattended. This is close to approval. We had a meeting a few weeks ago where a number of comments were raised. This has now, we believe, been resolved. We've got another meeting to finalise the text in next week. And so we hope to be able to publish this document end of July. Moving on to the more general use of trust services for registered electronic delivery or email. The electronic mail standards builds on a more generic e-delivery set of standards. And also we have standards for preserving and archiving signatures. These are very much based on use of preserving the signatures. They don't provide full archiving of non-signed data, although that may be updated or extended to support such services with the agreement of the new eIDAS regulation. So what we've been working on is clarifying some of the details of interoperability for registered email, which is one of the main areas of interest at the moment. And we've updated a version of the interoperability profiles for registered email, and these are currently under tests. The tests, in fact, are ongoing over the last week or two, and we expect to be able to publish, first of all, as a draft for approval, and then a draft EN later in this year. Looking at the use of trusted lists, if you're familiar with the way eIDAS operates, its is a list issued by European nations which contain a list of trust services, their certificates, and the services they support. And this list is based on the approval of being qualified The standard has been published for the format of a trusted list since 2016 and has been applied by all the European nations since then. What we've been working on recently is an update or is additional standards for procedures for using the European trusted list for validation. So these procedures start from using a published recognition of the basic list of European trusted lists, and then it goes through how to validate the European list of lists, and then down to the national lists and identify the specific certificate appropriate for the use of validating signatures. And then there is a separate document which actually defines a policy building on the earlier standard I mentioned, 119 or EN 319-102-1, on how to apply the validation to European qualified signatures and seals using the trusted list. The activity on use of trusted lists is now widening to other nations. The European Commission have been in discussions with a number of nations and have already started or planning to start in early new year the interoperability tests, starting with the EU trusted list. And Japan is one of the first countries that has started exchanging trusted lists with the European trusted lists. And so that an extension to the EU list of lists can point to other nations which have been recognized as meeting the requirements of equivalence to qualified for European qualified trust services. So in conclusion, we have a range of standards supporting all of these areas. So some of these have been updated recently, and with the potential appearance of new qualified trust services to support eIDAS, we expect this architecture to be further extended to support other trust services such as attribute services, blockchain, distributed ledger, and such like. But we're just starting discussions as a committee what activities we'll do, and probably won't be starting any firm development until the new year in 2022, once the eIDAS regulation has been more widely, the update to eIDAS regulation has been adopted by the European Union and has been applied by a number of member nations. So I thank you very much for your interest. If you want to get a list of the current activities and standards, we have a website which we regularly update with a list of all the latest standards. If you want to just identify a particular standard, there's a standard search facility which will provide a link to a free download of any particular standards. And to obtain latest updates, you can register with our news feed, which will give you the latest information on our standardization for electronic signatures and trust services. So with that, I pass you back to the moderator and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nick. That was not only a really insightful presentation, but also thank you for sharing your further resources. And I hope you, the audience, could get some new information, some new insights. And again, before we dive into our next talk, feel free to use the chat function to ask questions and to engage with our speakers.